The great hall was silent as Park walked toward the center platform. Her footsteps echoed against the polished stone floor. Above her, the domed ceiling showed the stars of 1,000 worlds, each one representing a species that had joined the galactic Concord. Was small compared to the aliens watching her. The stood 3 meters tall with silver skin and 4 arms. They were covered in hard shells like beetles. They floated in tanks of purple liquid because they could not breathe air. 12 species in total. 12 ancient civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. And then there was humanity, 500 years in space, newcomers, children, as the elder species liked to call them. Stopped at the center of the platform. She wore the simple black uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. No decorations, no medals, just the small blue planet embroidered over her heart. "Thank you for allowing me to speak," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. The translation systems carried her words to every corner of the hall. Elder of the leaned forward in his seat. His 4 eyes blinked slowly. "We always welcome the young species," he said. His tone was kind but also dismissive, like an adult humoring a child. "What wisdom do you bring us today, Ambassador Park?" Touched a button on her wrist. A holographic display appeared in the air above her. It showed a fleet of ships unlike any the Conquered used. These ships were black and covered in spikes. They looked like weapons themselves. The hegemony said, "I assume you know them." A ripple of discomfort moved through the assembly. They were a conquering species from the outer rim of the galaxy. They had destroyed 17 civilizations in the past decade, but they were far away. The Conquered's borders were safe. That was what everyone believed. "They are not our concern," said Elder. "They fight among the barbarian worlds. They would never dare attack the Conquered." Nodded slowly. "That is what we thought too, until 3 months ago." She changed the display. Now it showed lines of code and intercepted transmissions. Earth's deep space monitoring stations picked up these signals. Our analysts have spent 90 days decoding them. She paused. "They are military communications, battle plans." The hall grew very quiet. "According to these plans," continued, "they will attack the Conquered's outer colonies in 3 cycles. They will push inward toward your core worlds. They expect to conquer everything within 5 years." For a moment no one spoke. Then Elder began to laugh. It was a strange sound, like stones grinding together. The other joined him. Then they clicked their shells in amusement. Even they bubbled in their tanks, which was their way of laughing. Stood still and waited. "Ambassador Park," Elder said when he finally stopped laughing, "do you know how long the Conquered has existed? 10,000 years. 10,000 years of peace between our species. We have the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. They are nothing but raiders and thieves." "They were raiders," said. "They have changed. They have unified under a single leader. They have built weapons that—" "Enough," raised one of his 4 hands. "We appreciate your concern. Truly we do. It is charming that such a young species wants to help, but you do not understand galactic politics. You have been in space for only 5 centuries. We have been here for—" Another elder spoke up. "Perhaps the humans are afraid because they are weak. They see threats everywhere because they cannot defend themselves." Laughter again. Felt heat rise in her chest, but she kept her face calm. "We are offering you an alliance," she said. "Humanity's defensive technologies in exchange for recognition as equals in the Conquered. We have weapons that could help you. Strategies that—" "Weapons?" shook his head. "We have seen human weapons, Ambassador, kinetic projectiles, nuclear devices, barbaric tools from a barbaric age. The Conquered evolved past such things long ago." "You evolved past war," said quietly. "We did not." The laughter stopped. Something in her voice made the elders pause. "We remember our wars," continued. "We remember what it cost us. Millions dead, cities burned. We learned from that pain. We studied war because we had to, because we knew that someday someone would come for us, and we would need to be ready. She looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of each elder species. You have forgotten. You have had peace for so long that you do not remember what war really is. That is why the will defeat you. Elder stood up. His silver skin had turned dark with anger. You dare to lecture us? You, whose species still remembers its own world wars. You, who nearly destroyed yourselves with nuclear weapons. You are children playing with fire, Ambassador Park. Nothing more. Did not back down. Yes, we nearly destroyed ourselves. And because of that, we know exactly how destruction works. We know how to cause it, and we know how to stop it. She turned off the holographic display. The hall fell into shadow for a moment before the regular lights returned. I have delivered my warning, she said. You may ignore it if you wish, but when they come, and they will come, remember this moment. Remember that humanity tried to help you. She began walking toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed again in the silent hall. Wait, called Elder. What will humanity do when they attack? Will you hide? Will you run back to your little blue planet? Stopped, she turned around slowly. When they come, she said, do not call for us. She paused. We will come anyway, that is what humans do. She left the assembly hall without another word. Outside, a shuttle was waiting for her. General stood beside it, his arms crossed over his chest. He was a tall man with gray hair and a face that had seen too many battles. How did it go? He asked. Climbed into the shuttle. They laughed at us. Nodded, he did not seem surprised. The fleet is ready in orbit, 200 ships. Should I send them home? Looked out the window as the shuttle lifted off. Below, the beautiful towers of Prime glittered in the sunlight. The Conquered had built this neutral world as a symbol of peace and cooperation. It was lovely, and it was completely defenseless. No, she said, keep the fleet nearby, hidden but close. You think they will really come? Closed her eyes. She thought about the intercepted transmissions. She thought about the 17 worlds that had already fallen. She thought about the Supreme Commander, a monster who decorated his throne room with the bones of conquered species. They will come, she said, and when they do, these proud elders will learn a very hard lesson. Sat down across from her, and then opened her eyes. There was something cold in them now, something that remembered every war humanity had ever fought, every lesson written in blood. And then, she said, we will teach them a lesson too. We will show them what happens when you threaten the galaxy that humanity has chosen to protect. The shuttle rose higher, leaving the golden towers behind. Above them, hidden among the stars, 200 human warships waited in silence, ready, patient. Humanity had given its warning. Now they would wait for the fire to begin. They came exactly when humanity said they would. 3 cycles after Park's warning, the outer colonies of the Conquered began to burn. The first world to fall was 7, a peaceful farming planet where they grew crops to feed a dozen systems. The fleet appeared without warning. Their black ships blocked out the sun. Within 6 hours, every city was in flames. The Conquered's response was slow and confused. They had not fought a real war in 3,000 years. Their military was ceremonial. Their weapons were designed for parades, not battles. When the Conquered fleet finally arrived at 7, they destroyed them in minutes. News of the defeat spread across the galaxy like a disease. Fear followed it. On the farming world of 4, Doctor heard the emergency broadcast while she was working in her laboratory. She was a human scientist who studied alien plants. She had lived on 4 for 3 years, learning from the farmers and helping them improve their crops. The broadcast was simple and terrifying. Forces incoming. Evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. Ran outside. The sky was still blue and peaceful, but she could see bright flashes in the distance. Ships fighting, ships dying. Around her, farmers stood frozen with fear. They did not know what to do. They had never experienced war. Their children cried. Their elders stared at the sky with confusion in their 4 eyes. Made a decision. "Everyone listen to me," she shouted. Her voice was small compared to but something in her tone made them turn toward her. "We need to get to the evacuation shuttles. Now, follow me." She started running toward the spaceport. After a moment of hesitation, they followed her. The same species that had laughed at humanity's warning now followed a human woman because she was the only one who seemed to know what to do. The spaceport was chaos. Shuttles were leaving half empty because the pilots were too scared to wait, grabbed a port worker and spoke firmly into his face. "How many shuttles do we have left?" "3," the worker stammered. "But the pilots have fled. No one knows how to fly them." Cursed under her breath. Then she climbed into the nearest shuttle and sat in the pilot's seat. She had never flown a shuttle before, but she had flown human ships. The basic principles were the same. "I need 30 minutes, she called out. "Get everyone on board, women and children first. Move." They obeyed without question. 3,000 of them crowded into the 3 shuttles, worked frantically, learning the alien controls, making mistakes, fixing them. Above the planet, the battle grew closer. Fighters were breaking through the defense lines. 28 minutes later, launched the first shuttle. She stayed behind to launch the other 2, then jumped into the last one just as bombs began falling on the spaceport. As the shuttle rose into space, looked back at the planet she had called home. Fires were spreading across the farmland. 3 years of work destroyed in hours. But 3,000 were alive because of her. That was what mattered. Far across the galaxy, another human was also refusing to run. Captain Han commanded the Defiance, a small patrol ship with a crew of 45. When the invasion began, the Defiance was stationed near the nebula, far behind what quickly became enemy lines. Her orders were clear: retreat to human space immediately. Read the orders twice, then she deleted them. Captain, her first officer, a young man named, looked at her with concern. "What are our orders?" New orders said, "We're staying." The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. They were 45 humans against the largest invasion fleet in galactic history. It was suicide. "Captain said carefully, they have over 10,000 ships in this sector. We have one." Smiled, it was not a happy smile. "Then we'll have to be creative." Over the next 3 weeks, the Defiance became a ghost. They hid in asteroid fields and gas clouds. They struck supply lines when no one expected it. They destroyed fuel depots, communication stations, and transport ships. Then they vanished before they could respond. The commanders were confused. How could one small ship cause so much damage? They sent hunting parties to find the Defiance. The hunting parties never returned. Also did something else. She broadcast survival tactics on every frequency she could reach. She told the conquered worlds how to hide from patrols. She explained how to sabotage equipment. She gave them hope. "You are not alone," she said in every broadcast. "Humanity has not forgotten you. Keep fighting. Help is coming." They put a bounty on her head. They called her the Ghost of. They feared her more than they feared entire conquered fleets. Meanwhile, on Luna Station orbiting Earth's moon, Admiral received a desperate transmission from the Galactic Conquered. He played it for his command staff in the war room. The holographic image showed Elder, the same who had laughed at Ambassador Park, but was not laughing now. His silver skin was pale with fear. His 4 eyes were wide and desperate. "People of Earth," said his voice shaking, "we were wrong. They have destroyed 40 of our worlds. Our fleets are broken. Our people are dying. We beg you, please help us. We will give you anything. Recognition, territory, whatever you want, just please help us." The transmission ended. The war room was silent. Admiral stood with his hands clasped behind his back, looking at the empty space where his image had been. "They laughed at us," said Commander O's chief tactical officer. "They called us children. They said our weapons were barbaric." Yes, agreed, they did. And now they want us to save them. Turned to face his staff. These were men and women who had dedicated their lives to protecting Earth. They had trained for years, prepared for the day when humanity would need to defend itself against a hostile galaxy. Let me ask you something, said. Why do we fight? The staff looked at each other, uncertain. We fight to protect our families, Commander answered. To protect Earth, to protect humanity. Nodded. And what about strangers? What about people who insulted us, who dismissed us, who laughed at us when we tried to warn them? Silence. 3,000 are alive right now because Doctor refused to abandon them, said. Dozens of conquered worlds still have hope because Captain Han refused to retreat. They didn't help those people because they deserved it. They helped them because they could. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. That is what makes us human. We help people, not because they earned it, not because they will pay us back, but because when we see suffering, we cannot look away. He turned back to his staff. Prepare the fleet. Every ship we have, we're going to war. Commander stepped forward. Sir, the council hasn't authorized. Then get me the council, said. Ambassador Park was right 3 cycles ago and she's right now. The galaxy needs us, and humanity answers when we are needed. The orders went out within hours. Every human warship in every system received the same message. Mobilize immediately. The largest fleet in human history began to gather. 2,000 ships, weapons that the conquered called barbaric, crews who remembered what it meant to fight. The stars were burning, but Earth's children were coming to put out the fire. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace like a wall of steel and fire. 2,000 warships, arranged in perfect formation, filled the void near the nebula. At their center flew the flagship, the Eternal Dawn, carrying General. Stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display. Ahead of them, the Conquered's last defensive line was crumbling. 300 conquered ships faced over 2,000 warships. It was not a battle, it was a slaughter. General, said his communications officer, we're receiving a transmission from the commander. Put it through. The holographic display flickered and appeared. He was massive, covered in black armor that looked like it had been grown rather than built. His face was a nightmare of teeth and eyes. Behind him could see the bodies of conquered species displayed like trophies. More prey, the commander said. His voice was deep and hungry. Excellent. The conquered servants have come to die alongside their masters. His expression did not change. We are not servants, we are human, and we are not prey. The laughed, it was an ugly sound. Human, the young species, the children who play with nuclear toys, we have heard of you. You will make fine slaves. Smiled slightly. We are the warning you should have heeded, but you didn't listen. Neither did the conquered. Perhaps you will both learn together. He cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. Begin Operation Sunrise. All ships, attack Formation Delta. The human fleet moved. The conquered had watched war from a distance for. They had theories about combat, strategies written in ancient texts that no one had tested in generations. Their ships flew in straight lines and fired in predictable patterns. Humans were different. Human tactics came from thousands of years of killing each other. Every war, every battle, every massacre had taught them something new. They had learned to be unpredictable. They had learned to sacrifice. They had learned that victory often went to the side that was willing to do what the enemy did not expect. The commander ordered a standard envelopment, a tactic that had crushed the conquered fleet. His ships spread out to surround the humans. But the human formation shifted. Wings of ships that had seemed to be in one place suddenly appeared in another. The envelopment failed because the humans had anticipated it. They had moved before they even finished giving orders. Impossible, the commander growled. They're reading our transmissions. He was wrong. The humans were not reading transmissions. They were simply thinking like they knew what a conquering mind would do because humanity had produced conquerors of its own. Alexander, Khan, Napoleon. The humans had studied their own monsters, and now they used that knowledge to predict the enemy. In the chaos of battle, Lieutenant Song flew her fighter through a wall of defense fire. She was the leader of Ghost Squadron, 17 pilots who had trained together for 5 years. They knew each other's thoughts. They moved as one. "Target acquired," said calmly. "Carrier dead ahead, we're going inside." Her squadron followed her into the carrier's hangar bay. The had left it open, expecting to launch more fighters. They did not expect 17 human ships to fly directly into their vessel. Inside the carrier and her pilots unleashed everything they had: missiles, cannons, everything. The carrier's internal systems exploded around them. "Eject, eject, eject," shouted. 17 pilots ejected from their ships moments before the carrier tore itself apart. The explosion was visible from across the battlefield. A carrier, destroyed from within by a handful of humans. Rescue shuttles picked up all 17 pilots within minutes. Not a single human life was lost. On the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, General watched the battle unfold. They were confused now. Their formations were breaking. They had never faced an enemy that fought like this, an enemy that was willing to fly into death and somehow escape alive. "Sir," said his tactical officer, "they are regrouping around their command ship. They're preparing a final push." Nodded. "They think we'll retreat now that we've shown our strength. They expect us to negotiate." He paused. "They don't understand humans at all." He opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is General. They believe this battle is about power. They believe we're here to prove ourselves. They're wrong. We're here because billions of innocent people are counting on us. We're here because the galaxy called for help and we answered. Today we show the universe what humanity truly is. Not conquerors, not destroyers, protectors. Now, advance." The human fleet surged forward. They fought hard. They were warriors, after all, bred for combat over countless generations. But they fought for glory and conquest. They fought to take. Humans fought to protect. Every pilot, every gunner, every captain knew that somewhere behind them, refugees were fleeing to safety. Children were crying for their parents. Families were praying for salvation. The humans fought for them. That made all the difference. When a ship broke through the human lines and headed for a refugee convoy, 3 human destroyers intercepted it. They put themselves between thee and the civilians. 2 of the destroyers were destroyed, but the refugees escaped. The crews of those destroyers knew what they were doing. They chose to die so that strangers could live. They could not understand such a choice. It made no sense to them. Why would warriors sacrifice themselves for people they had never met? That confusion was their weakness. By the end of the day, the Battle of Nebula was over. They had lost 800 ships. The humans had lost 112. The conquered surviving fleet, barely 50 ships, watched in stunned silence as the humans secured the battlefield. Medical ships moved among the wreckage, rescuing survivors. Human survivors, conquered survivors, even survivors. The humans pulled wounded enemies from broken ships and treated their injuries. A conquered captain contacted the Eternal Dawn. His face was full of confusion. "General, why are you saving they are the enemy?" Looked at him calmly. "They are defeated. They are no longer soldiers. They are patients, and humans do not let patients die if we can help them." The conquered captain had no response. He had never seen anything like this. He had never imagined that a species could be so fierce in battle and so compassionate in victory. That night, as the fleet regrouped, General received a message from Ambassador Park. She was aboard a diplomatic vessel, watching everything. "You did it," she said. "You actually did it." Shook his head. "We stopped them here, but they still control 50 systems. There is untouched. This war isn't over." His eyes narrowed. The conquered elders want to negotiate now. They want to offer the peace treaty, give them the systems they've already taken, and abandon the people living in those systems. Yes, was silent for a long moment. No, we didn't come this far to abandon anyone. If the conquered wants peace through surrender, they can have it, but humanity will keep fighting. The conquered won't like that. The conquered didn't like our warning either, and they didn't like our weapons, and they didn't like our tactics, smiled grimly. They can learn to deal with disappointment. We're going to finish this war. We're going to free every world they have taken, and then we're going to make sure no one ever threatens this galaxy again. Smiled back. I'll tell the conquered. They're going to be very upset. Good, upset is better than dead. The human fleet began preparing for the next phase of the war. Behind them, the nebula glowed with the light of 1,000 burning ships. Ahead of them, the waited. The stars had witnessed something new today. A species that fought not for conquest but for compassion. A species that saved its enemies and buried its friends. A species that refused to give up, no matter the cost. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy, and the galaxy would never be the same. The human fleet reached the home system after 6 weeks of hard fighting. 50 conquered worlds had been liberated. Millions of prisoners had been freed. The war machine was broken, its forces scattered and retreating toward their final stronghold. Now, at last, humanity stood at the gates of Prime. General looked at the planet through the main viewport of the eternal dawn. It was a dark world, covered in black mountains and red oceans. Cities sprawled across its surface like scars. Orbital defense platforms surrounded it like a shell of metal and fire. This was where the war would end, one way or another. Ambassador Park stood beside him. She had joined the fleet 3 days ago, along with Elder and several other conquered leaders. The Elder species wanted to witness the final battle. They also wanted to give advice, though had stopped listening to them weeks ago. The conquered recommends a siege, said. Believes we should surround the planet and wait, that we'll starve within a generation. Did not turn from the viewport. A generation, 20 years, maybe 30. That's a long time for the people on that planet to suffer. Says those people are enemies. They chose to follow the Supreme Commander. Did they? Finally looked at her. Did every farmer choose this war, every child, every mother who just wanted to feed her family? He shook his head. The leadership started this war. The people are just people. They don't deserve to starve because their leaders are monsters. Smiled sadly. The conquered doesn't think that way. I know, that's why the conquered lost. A tactical officer approached. General, Major reports his ground forces are ready. 100,000 soldiers plus armor and air support. Nodded. Tell him to prepare for deployment. We're doing this the hard way. The hard way. It was a phrase the human military used often. It meant doing what was right instead of what was easy. It meant risking human lives to minimize enemy casualties. It meant treating war as a terrible necessity rather than a glorious adventure. The plan was simple but dangerous. Instead of bombarding the planet from orbit, human ground forces would land and capture key military targets. They would arrest the leadership and disable the defense systems. They would do everything possible to spare civilian lives. It would cost human soldiers their lives. Everyone knew that. They chose to do it anyway. The assault began at dawn time. Drop ships fell through the atmosphere like burning meteors. Major was in the first wave, leading his battalion toward the command complex. Anti-aircraft fire filled the sky around them. Ships exploded. Soldiers died before they even reached the ground. But they kept coming. Hit the ground running. His power armor protected him from small arms fire, but they had heavier weapons. Plasma cannons, missile launchers, things that could kill a human even through the best armor. Move, 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 he shouted. His soldiers followed him toward the outer wall of the command complex. Breaching charges ready. The wall exploded inward. Human soldiers poured through the gap. Inside, warriors waited with blades and guns. The fighting was close and brutal. Humans fell. The corridors ran with blood of two species. And then found something he did not expect. In a small room beneath the complex, he found civilians, women and children hiding from the battle above. They screamed when they saw him. They expected death. Every species they had conquered had taught them that conquerors showed no mercy. Lowered his weapon. "Sergeant," he said to the soldier behind him, "secure this room, post guards. No one touches these people." The sergeant looked confused. "Sir, they're the enemy. They're civilians. They're not holding weapons. That makes them non-combatants." His voice was firm. "We didn't come here to murder families. We came here to end a war. There's a difference." The room was secured. The civilians were protected by human soldiers, the same humans they had been taught to hate and fear. Word spread quickly through the ranks. The humans were not killing prisoners. They were not massacring civilians. They were fighting only those who fought back. Some soldiers surrendered. Others fought harder, unable to accept that their enemy could be merciful. The battle raged for 16 hours. Finally, reached the throne room of the Supreme Commander. The Supreme Commander was enormous, twice the size of a normal. His body was covered in ceremonial armor made from the bones of his enemies. He sat on a throne built from the skulls of conquered kings. "Human," the Supreme Commander growled, "you dare enter my chamber." Kept his weapon raised. "You are under arrest for crimes against sentient life. Surrender now and you will receive a fair trial." The Supreme Commander laughed. It was a sound like mountains crashing together. "A trial? You think your laws apply to me? I have burned 100 worlds. I have enslaved billions. I am beyond your petty justice." He stood and pressed a button on his throne. Alarms screamed throughout the complex. Communication system crackled with panicked voices. "Major, the planetary defense grid is activating." "What's it targeting?" "Everything. It's going to destroy the entire planet." The Supreme Commander smiled with his nightmare mouth. "If I cannot rule, no one will. My world will die with me. My legacy will be destruction so complete that the galaxy will remember my name forever." Felt cold fear in his chest, not for himself, for the millions of civilians who would die, for the human soldiers who had fought so hard to save them. He opened a channel to the Eternal Dawn. "General, the Supreme Commander has activated a planetary destruction system. We need the Stellar Lance." Silence on the channel. Then's voice, calm and steady, understood targeting now. The Stellar Lance was humanity's most terrible weapon. It worked by focusing energy from a star into a beam of pure destruction. It could vaporize a city in seconds. It could crack a planet in half. But it could also be precise. Incredibly, impossibly precise. In orbit, the Eternal Dawn adjusted its position. Massive collectors extended from its hull, drinking in the light of the sun. Energy built inside the ship, more energy than 1,000 nuclear bombs. "Target acquired," said the weapons officer. "The planetary defense grid. We can destroy it without touching the civilian centers." Nodded fire. The Stellar Lance activated. On the surface of Prime, saw the sky turn white. A beam of pure descended from the heavens, so bright that his armor's visor automatically darkened to protect his eyes. The beam struck the defense grid installations across the planet, one after another, faster than thought. Explosions bloomed across the horizon. The ground shook, the air screamed. And then it was over. The defense grid was gone, destroyed, but the city still stood. The civilian centers were untouched. Humanity had used its most powerful weapon not to destroy, but to save. The Supreme Commander stared at the sky in disbelief. His plan had failed. His final act of spite had been stopped by a species he had dismissed as children. "How," he whispered, How can you be so strong and so restrained? Walked toward him, weapon raised. Because strength without mercy is just cruelty, and we stopped being cruel to each other a long time ago. He paused. You're under arrest. Will you come quietly, or do we have to do this the hard way? The Supreme Commander reached for his blade. He never touched it. Shot was clean and precise. The Supreme Commander fell, wounded but alive. He would face trial. He would answer for his crimes. Justice would be done, not vengeance. Outside, the guns fell silent. Soldiers emerged from their positions, hands raised. They had seen the stellar lance in action. They had seen their defense grid destroyed with surgical precision. They knew the humans could have killed them all. But the humans had chosen not to. That choice changed everything. In the small room beneath the command complex, a young child approached one of the human guards. The guard knelt down to meet the child's eyes. "Why?" the child asked. "Why did you save us? We are your enemies." The guard thought for a moment. She remembered her training. She remembered her purpose. She remembered why she had joined the military in the first place. "You're not our enemy," she said gently. "Your leaders were, and we don't punish children for what their leaders do." She smiled behind her helmet. "My name is Sara. What's yours?" The child hesitated. Then slowly she answered. It was the beginning of something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. Not conquest, not dominion, but healing. The war was over. The hard work of peace was about to begin. The Great Hall on Prime looked the same as it had on the day Ambassador Park delivered her warning. The same polished stone floor. The same domed ceiling showing 1,000 stars. The same seats for the 12 elder species of the Galactic Concord. But everything had changed. Walked toward the center platform for the second time in her life. This time, no one laughed. Every eye in the hall watched her with respect. Some watched with fear. A few watched with something like wonder. She wore the same simple black uniform. No decorations, no medals, just the small blue planet over her heart. Elder stood to greet her. The leader looked different now, older, tired. He had watched his civilization nearly fall. He had watched humans do what the conquered could not. "Ambassador Park," he said. His voice was soft, almost humble. "Thank you for coming." Nodded. "Thank you for inviting me, Elder." Gestured to the assembly. "Before we begin official business, I must speak on behalf of the entire Concord." He paused, gathering his words. "1 year ago you stood in this hall and warned us of the threat. We laughed at you. We called you children. We dismissed your concerns and your offers of help." He bowed his head. The other bowed with him. One by one, every elder species in the hall followed. "We were wrong," said. "We were arrogant and foolish. Our arrogance nearly destroyed us. Only humanity's courage and sacrifice saved us from annihilation." He looked up at. "On behalf of the Galactic Concord, I offer our deepest apologies and our eternal gratitude." Stood in silence for a moment. She thought about all the human lives lost in the war, the ships destroyed, the families broken. She thought about the hatred she could feel if she let herself. But that was not why she was here. "Elder," she said, "I accept your apology, and I thank you for your gratitude, but I want you to understand something." She looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of every species represented. Humanity did not save the conquered because we wanted recognition. We did not fight because we hoped for reward. We fought because we saw innocent people suffering and we could not look away. She let that sink in before continuing. "That is who we are. That is what it means to be human. When we see someone drowning, we jump in the water. We don't stop to ask if they deserve saving. We don't negotiate payment first. We act because action is needed." Nodded slowly. "We understand this now, and that is why we wish to offer humanity the highest honor the conquered can bestow." He spread his 4 arms wide. "We invite humanity to join the conquered as an elder species, equal status with the founding civilizations, a voice in all decisions, a seat at every table." The hall buzzed with whispered conversations. This was unprecedented. No species had been elevated to elder status in 5,000 years. Smiled gently. "Thank you, Elder, truly. This is a great honor." She paused. "But I must decline." Shocked silence filled the hall. "We didn't do this for status," explained. "We did it because it was necessary, because when we saw suffering we couldn't look away. You call that a weakness, we call it our greatest strength." She shook her head. "If we accept elder status now, it will seem like we fought for power. That's not the message we want to send." Looked confused. "Then what do you want?" Thought carefully before answering. "We want partnership, real partnership, not hierarchy. We want the conquered to change the way it thinks about young species. We want you to listen when someone brings a warning, even if they're new to the stars. We want you to remember that wisdom doesn't always come from age." She smiled again. "Give us those things and we'll consider ourselves well paid." The assembly debated for hours. In the end, they agreed to every request. The conquered would be reformed. Young species would have a voice. Warnings would be taken seriously. It was a new beginning for the galaxy. After the formal session ended, walked through the gardens outside the hall. The flowers of 100 worlds bloomed around her. She found a quiet bench and sat down, finally allowing herself to rest. Footsteps approached. She looked up to see General, wearing civilian clothes for the first time in years. "I heard you turned down elder status," he said, sitting beside her. "It wasn't why we fought." "I know, but some of the soldiers are disappointed. They think we earned it." Nodded. "We did earn it. That's exactly why we don't need it." Smiled. It was the first genuine smile she had seen on his face since the war began. "You always were smarter than me." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching alien birds fly between the trees. "What happens now?" finally asked. "Now we rebuild. The territories need help. The conquered species need support. There's a lot of work to do." And they themselves had visited the last month. She had seen the rebuilding efforts. She had met with civilians who were learning slowly that not all species wanted to hurt them. "They're healing," she said. "It will take generations, but they're healing. Major is leading the peacekeeping mission there. He's good at it, patient, kind." She remembered the report she had received yesterday, had shared a meal with the young child he had saved during the assault on the command complex. The child's name was translated roughly as Hope. She had asked to teach her about Earth. He had agreed. Small moments, small connections, that was how peace was truly built. Across the galaxy, other human heroes were finding their own paths forward. Doctor had established the first joint human research station. The farmers she had rescued now worked alongside her as equals. Together, they were developing new crops that could grow on war-damaged worlds, helping to feed refugees throughout the former conflict zone. Captain Han had been promoted to admiral. Her guerrilla tactics were now studied in military academies across the conquered. She taught the next generation of officers, human and alien alike, that courage was not about having no fear. It was about acting despite fear. Lieutenant Song trained fighter pilots from a dozen species. Her squadron had become legendary during the war. Now she was creating new squadrons, mixed teams of humans and aliens who learned to trust each other in the darkness of space. Admiral had retired to Luna Station, where he spent his days writing his memoirs and playing with his. His final log entry had become famous. "We proved that strength and compassion are not opposites. They are the same thing, wielded correctly." In general, he retired too, eventually. He moved to a small house on a quiet colony world where he grew vegetables and watched the stars at night. But that was still in the future. For now, he sat beside Park in the gardens of Prime, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors no human eye had seen before Earth reached the stars. "Do you think it will last?" he asked. "The peace, I mean. Do you think the conquered really learned its lesson? Consider the question. Some of them, yes, others will forget. That's how people are, any people, human or alien. Then what was the point, if they'll just forget and make the same mistakes again? Smiled. The point is that we tried. The point is that for one moment we showed the galaxy what was possible. We showed them that strength can be gentle, that warriors can be healers, that the same hand that wields a weapon can also lift a fallen enemy. She looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Maybe they'll forget. Maybe in 1,000 years, some new threat will arise and the conquered will make the same mistakes, but they'll also remember us. They'll remember that once when the stars burned, humanity answered. They'll remember that we fought not for conquest but for compassion. She stood up and offered her hand too. And maybe, just maybe, they'll try to be a little more like us. Took her hand and stood. Together they walked back toward the hall where a celebration was beginning. Humans and aliens, former enemies and new friends, gathering to mark the end of one era and the beginning of another. Above them, the stars shone peacefully. The same stars that had burned with war now burned with hope. Somewhere in the galaxy, a new species was making first contact with the conquered. They were aggressive, territorial, demanding. The old conquered might have laughed at their threats. The new conquered simply smiled and said, "You may attempt conquest if you wish, but we should warn you, humanity is watching." The new species asked, "What is humanity?" And the conquered ambassador answered with pride she had never felt before. They are the ones who answered when no one else would, the ones who burned stars to protect strangers. They are Earth's children, and they are our friends. In the darkness between worlds, human ships kept their silent vigil, watching, protecting, ready. Not because they had to, but because that was what humans did.